Welcome to another audiobook. As I said in the last one, I'm doing these in honor of October being Halloween month. And I did some of these, I think, a year ago, and I thought, well, I'd do some more. And I'm focusing on the first three books that I published with Tales of Wonder and Dread, and I'm on the second one, which is Spooky Rockford. And I'm going to read a piece, a non-fiction piece I did called Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, a road trip to paranormal hotspot for you. While it's not located exactly in the greater Rockford area, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is a reasonably short drive. It's also considered to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in the world. Given that it's quite small, about an acre, that's quite a feat. Located in the southern part of the Chicago suburbs, Midlothian, there are numerous reports of supernatural activity that have been reported in and around the Boneyard. This article will explore some of those claims while making no judgment as to the veracity of them. But first, some background on Bachelor's Grove and the cemetery will be addressed. The cemetery sits within the Rubio Woods Forest Preserve. Established in the middle part of the 1800s, 1844 is often given as the date, but the records are spotty at best. The cemetery was originally called Everton's. It was in use until the late 1960s, but has been abandoned since then. The name was changed at some point in the 19th century, getting its current moniker. It's likely that the original name referred to a family or person who owned the property. There are a number of stories attempting to explain the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery title, but the most likely one is that there was a nearby community called Bachelor's Grove. The entire area of the cemetery fell victim to changing traffic patterns. A road called the Midlothian Turnpike provided access to the cemetery in the past. That road was closed in the 1960s, though, isolating the graveyard. While there were plans in place to create an entrance from 143rd Street, it never happened. The cemetery these days can be accessed only by foot via a small trail that comes off of the old turnpike. Even before the cemetery was closed, its history is said to have become checkered. There are even stories that a quarry pond on the grounds was used in the 1930s as a corpse dumping ground by the Chicago mobs, including Al Capone. There's been no evidence found showing that to be true, though, so it's most likely an urban legend. It did become a destination point in the 1960s, though. Couples looking for a place to be alone would frequent the cemetery as a makeout point. At some point around the same time, vandalism became a problem. Perhaps it was a rite of passage for those couples or other school kids. In any event, by the time the cemetery was actually closed, there had been a lot of desecration on the premises. Reportedly, the tale gets even darker in the 1970s. After the Boneyard's usage ceased, it is said that a cult group started gathering there. Reportedly, they conducted rituals in the burial ground. It is likely that during that period of time, more desecration took place. There are very few stones today that are untouched, and some are missing altogether. There's actually another rumor about the pond, which says that a number of the missing stones are at the bottom of the body of water. Just like the stories about the gangsters, though, no one has been able to confirm that. However, the situation got so bad that some of the families of the deceased actually had the remains of their loved ones removed to other resting places. After that short history lesson, let's check out some of the supernatural events that have been reported over the years. Some of the tales begin outside the actual cemetery on the old Midlothian Turnpike and the trail that is used to access the burial ground these days. There are a number of visitors who have reported seeing an old farmhouse along the path. The reports show it in different locations. While there are differences in those reports, there are also some striking similarities. The house itself is quite similar in all the accounts. It's a white farmhouse adorned with pillars on the porch. The porch also is reported to have a swing. There's a soft light burning in the window of the house. The building has been seen during the day and at night. Although this house has been seen at various locations, all the witnesses have seen it at a distance. When people have tried to get to the house, it has eventually just vanished. There's no historical record of any house like the one described ever existing at the location. There's a phenomenon of hooded monk-type beings that have been reported at a lot of sites in England. Similar sightings have been made on the path to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. The ones in England are typically regarded as positive beings. That's not true of the Illinois counterparts. Most witnesses report that the beings seem to impart a sense of unease. In addition, they have been said to chase people out of the graveyard. While they've been seen lurking around the outskirts of the path, some visitors have spotted them actually on the path. They've also been seen in the cemetery itself. Those monks are human-like in appearance, and they are not the only things that can be described that way in this location. One of the most famous ghost photographs ever taken includes such a being. Mari Huff took the photo on August 10, 1991. She was using high-speed infrared film and captured a woman sitting in a gravesite. The photo was taken in the daylight. Reportedly, when the picture was taken, there was no person in sight. After the picture was developed, the woman is clearly visible. In fact, the clarity of the image is one of the things that creates skepticism. It really appears to be a flesh and blood person. That woman has been dubbed the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. According to legend, she's a melancholy lady who is often seen wandering the graveyard holding her dead infant. She's been reported by numerous witnesses. She's most often seen when the moon is full. I haven't found information to indicate whether or not the reported sightings of the entity predate the photograph or not. It would be interesting to get an answer to that question, though. All that aside, it has been said that most photographs shown on location show some kind of aberration that could be attributed to supernatural activity. There are some particularly unusual examples of these photographic elements that have emerged from time to time. Phantom lights are the most common of those. There have also been pictures that seem to show a mist or fog present at the graves themselves. Perhaps the strangest, though, are pictures that appear to show a face on one of the headstones. That has been observed at various tombstones and in quite a few photographs. Beyond the photographic phenomenon, there have been other reports of human-like beings in the graveyard. One of those entities has been seen moving around the grounds in a long button-down coat. Some observers seem to think that he was walking, while others said he appeared to be flying. In the 1980s, there was an entity described as the glowing yellow man. An old farmer and his horse have been seen in the area around the pond. Supposedly, 2 forest rangers are among those who have seen those 2 beings. There's a legend circulating that the horse had bolted into the pond and both the farmer and steed drowned there. A 2-headed creature has also been reportedly seen near the pond. Perhaps the horse spotted it and that was what spooked him. Phantom lights captured in photos but also seen with naked eyes are arguably the most commonly reported activity at many supposed haunted locations. Bachelor's Grove is no exception to that statement. Various lights have been observed over the years. There are blue lights that have been observed within the graveyard. They have sometimes been said to be reactive, seeming to move away from the observers, and even appearing to take them on some kind of chase. Their movements are often said to be abrupt and precise. There have also been reports of red lights that move very quickly. While those have not been seen in the boneyard, there have also been reports of them on the path. In fact, they are more often seen on that path. That doesn't stop them from darting around the headstones in the graveyard, though. In addition to the photographic evidence that has been assembled over the years, audio recordings have served as a different type of evidence. Numerous recordings seem to include sounds that were not observed by the people who were there at the time of the recording. Sometimes voices can be heard seeming to come from nowhere. Remember, if you choose to make the trek to this location, that it closes at sundown. The curfew is strictly enforced by the police. With the history of vandalism and the popularity of the legends, you really can't blame them. There's an effort to restore the grounds. In fact, there have been reports that some of the gravestones have been removed in the last year or so, and some trees have been felled. If you do go, please don't hamper those efforts by causing more damage. Observe, but do so respectfully. Perhaps you will have an encounter or record some evidence that will become part of the legend of Bachelor's Grove. Now, after I wrote this, my friend Mike Korn and I went to Bachelor's Grove, and so I added an addendum to this that is also part of this article. Addendum. Since writing this article, I made a visit to the cemetery with my friend Mike Korn. I wanted to share the personal observations we made. First, my friend said that he didn't feel very good in the cemetery. He had a pressure in his head. Secondly, he said that you could feel the difference once you got inside there. I think that second point can be attributed to just how isolated it seems. You can hear cars on the road that runs very close by, but the entire path and the cemetery is within a very thick and deep forest. That almost creates a sense of being in a different, older world. For me, there was nothing that was conclusive, but there were a few oddities. While I was shooting pictures, I took about 200. Quite a few times I could swear that a shadow flew over the viewfinder just as I was shooting the picture. Also, near the back fence when I was taking pics, I kept hearing something that was probably an animal, but an animal making sounds I'd never heard before. I went to the fence and looked into the woods to try to figure out what it might be, and the sound would go away. When I'd start taking pictures again, the sound would come back. The best way I can describe the sound is to reference the Star Trek episode The Galileo 7. In that episode, the giant ape creatures make a sound that Spock said his Vulcan ears perceived it as wood rubbing on some kind of leather. Also, when I was shooting photos, I kept having the sensation of being bitten on the face by mosquitoes. I felt that by the time I got out of there, I would have had welts all over my face. There were a lot of mosquitoes, but I had no welts, and I generally react poorly to mosquito bites when I left. Finally, looking at those photos, see those used in here in the article in the gallery that follows. Yeah, there's a gallery and there are pictures in the book. After the fact, there were several oddities. There was one that has a shaft of light that comes partway to the ground that looks really odd. There are a couple that show orbs. Perhaps the oddest of the bunch, though, is a tombstone that looks as if a red and blue dot had been painted on it. But my friend and I both say that we remember that stone and do not remember the dots on it. To me, that seems even more interesting because people have reported seeing lights all over the place that are specifically described as those two colors. Anyway, that's the Bachelor's Grove article, and you can get that in Spooky Rockford, which you can get at lulu.com/spotlight/strange sound. And I'll see you in another week with one more of these audiobooks. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.